Please kindly unmute your voice. Who is it? Dear participants, kindly mute your voice. Some disturbances has taken place. Please mute. Yes, good evening one and all.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, let us start our national level webinar on Afro-American literature. I feel immensely honored to give this welcome address to you all. First, I welcome all our fellow participants, those who are always willing to attend our program willingly. I welcome you all and I thank you. Next, I welcome our resource person, Dr. Sheba V. Isaac, from Assistant Professor of English, PG Department, Government College, Tripunithra, Ernakulam, Kerala. Welcome you, ma'am. At the outset, I feel immensely pleasure to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor and respected Registrar and all the higher authorities of our... Please mute your voice, others. Somebody disturbing. Fayaz, excuse me, sir. Fayaz, sir. Please unmute your voice. Thank you. Thank you. Another one is there. Biswaji. Please mute your voice. Biswaji. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And I welcome you all once again. And at the outset, I feel immensely honored to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, respected Registrar, our Director, Dr. Dandapani sir, for all their cooperation and support to conduct such webinars continuously for the development of the knowledge of the students and also the staff members. I thank you all our higher authorities of our Thiruvalluvar University, Thiruvalluvar University, Vellore. And let me start my presentation. Afro-American literature. Introduction to Afro-American literature. African-American literature is the body of literature produced in the United States by the writers of African descent. The genre traces its origins to the works of such late 18th century writers as Phyllis Wheatley and Olaudah Equiano, reaching early high points with the slave narratives and the Harlem Renaissance, and continuing today with authors such as Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou and Walter Mosley. Among the themes and issues explored in African American literature or the role of African Americans within the authors such as these authors, that Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou and Walter Mosley. And the African American culture, racism, slavery and equality. African American writing has also tended to incorporate oral forms such as spirituals, sermons, gospel music, blues and rap. Let us see the African American literature. What is it? What is African American literature? African American literature is a literature written by, about and sometimes specifically for African Americans. And this genre during the 18th and 19th centuries, with writers such as poet Phyllis Wheatley and orator Frederick Douglass, reached an early high point with the Harlem Renaissance. And as African Americans place in American society, they changed over the centuries so too. And they have the fuzzy of African American literature. Before the American Civil War, African American literature primarily focused on the issue of slavery as indicated by the popular subgenre of slave narratives. At the turn of the 20th century, books by authors such as W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington debated whether to confront or appease racist attitudes in the United States. During the American civil rights movements, authors like Richard Wright and Gwendolyn Brooks wrote about issues of racial segregation and black nationalism. Today, African American literature has become accepted as an integral part of American literature, with books such as Roots, the Saga of American Family by Alex Haley, The Color Purple by Alice Walker, and Beloved by Toni Morrison, achieving both best-selling and award-winning status. Let us see the characteristics of the African American literature. The African American literature tends to focus on themes of particular interest to black people. For example, is it recording? Okay. Particular people, for example, the role of African Americans within the larger American society, and issues such as African American culture, racism, religion, slavery, freedom, and equality. This focus began with the earliest African American writings, such as the slave narrative genre in the early 19th century, and continues through the work of many modern day authors. Let us see another characteristic of African American literature is its strong tradition of incorporating oral poetry into itself. And there are many examples of oral poetry in African American culture, including spirituals, African American gospel music, and blues and rap. This oral poetry also shows up in the African American tradition of Christian sermons, which make use of the deliberate repetition, cadence, and alliteration. YouTube is not working on. All of these examples of oral poetry have made their way to African American literature. However, while these characteristics exist on many levels of African American literature, they are not the exclusive definition of the genre. As with any type of literature, there are disagreements as to genre's definition and which authors and works should be included. Recording correct? You don't bother about the YouTube. Let us upload it afterwards. Okay. So, African American literature writings by African Americans which lack black characters and situations and are not particularly targeted at black audiences, such as for example, much of the earlier work of best-selling novelist Frank Yerby and that of science fiction writer Samuel or Delany. And Yerby, whose historical fiction with white protagonists earned him the title King of the Costume Novel, became the first African American to write a best-selling novel. The Foxes of Harrow, the work of Delany, who is outspokenly gay, often has treated issues of sexual identity and social bias. While Delany does not specifically address these issues in an African American context, many consider him a leading voice in African American literature. Let us see the early African American literature. First, coming from Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley. Among the first prominent African American authors was poet Phyllis Wheatley, born at the year 1753, who published her book Poems on Various Subjects in 1773, 3 years before American independence. And she was born in Senegal, Africa. Wheatley was captured and sold into slavery at the age of 7. Brought to America. She was owned by a Boston merchant. Even though she initially spoke no English. By the time she was 16, she had mastered the language. Her poetry was praised by many of the leading figures of the American Revolution, including George Washington, who personally thanked her for a poem she wrote in his honor. Another early African American author was Jupiter Hammond. Hammond considered the first published black writer in America, and he published his poem An Evening Thought, Salvation by Christ with Penitential Cries. It has a broad side in early 1761. No problem. YouTube is not working, so record it. Okay. Yes. In 1778, he wrote an ode to Phyllis Wheatley, in which he discussed their shared humanity and common bonds. In 1786, Hammond gave his well-known address to the Negroes of the state of New York. Hammond's speech also promoted the idea of a gradual emancipation as a way of ending slavery. Next, we can see the William Wells Brown and Victor Sejour produced the earliest works of fiction by African American writers. Sejour published his short story Lee Mulatry, the Mulatto, in 1837. The story represents the first known fiction by an African American, but written in French and published in a French journal. It had apparently no influence on later American literature. Brown, on the other hand, was a prominent abolitionist lecturer, novelist, playwright, and historian. Brown wrote what is considered to be the first novel by an African American, that is Clotel, or The President's Daughter. It was published in the year 1853. The novel is based on what was that time considered to be rumor about Thomas Jefferson fathering a daughter with his slave Sally Hemings. So this is it. Next we shall see the slave narratives. The slave narratives also coming this period. A subgenre of African American literature which began in the middle of the 19th century is the slave narrative. At the time, the controversy over slavery led to impassioned literature on both sides of the issue, with books like Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was published in the year 1852, and it representing the abolitionist view of the evils of slavery, while the so-called anti-Tom literature by white Southern writers like William Gilmore Simms represented the pro-slavery viewpoint. So, to present the true reality of slavery, a number of former slaves such as Harriet Jacobs and Frederick Douglass wrote slave narratives, which soon became a mainstay of African American literature. Some 6,000 former slaves from North America and the Caribbean wrote accounts of their lives with about 150 of these published as separate books or pamphlets. Some of the slave narratives can be broadly categorized into three distinct forms. Is it recording? The slave narratives can be categorized into three distinct forms. They are the first one is tales of religious redemption. The second one is tales to inspire the abolitionist struggle. Then the third one is tales of progress. Let us see first Frederick Douglass in this sense. While Frederick Douglass first came to public attention as an orator and as the author of his autobiographical slave narrative, he eventually became the most prominent African American of his time and one of the most influential lecturers and authors in American history. And Douglass's best known work is his autobiography, that is a narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. It is his autobiographic biographic work. Yes, narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, which was published in the year 1845. At the time, some critics attacked the book, not believing that a black man could have written such an eloquent work. Despite this, the book was an immediate bestseller. So Douglass later revised and expanded his autobiography, which was republished as My Bondage and My Freedom. It was published in the year 1855. In addition to serving in a number of political posts during his life, he also wrote numerous influential articles and essays. Let us pass on to the post-slavery era. After the end of slavery and the American Civil War, a number of African American authors continued to write non-fiction works about the condition of African Americans in the country. Among the most prominent of these writers is W.E.B. Du Bois, 1868 to 1963, and one of the original founders of the NAACP at the turn of the century. Du Bois published a highly influential collection of essays titled The Souls of Black Folk. And Du Bois believed that African Americans should, because of their common interests, work together to battle prejudice and inequality. Another prominent author of this period is Booker T. Washington, 1856 to 1915, who in many ways represented opposite views from Du Bois. A third writer who gained attention during this period in the US throughout American was the Jamaican Marcus Garvey, 1887 to 1940, a publisher, a journalist, and crusader for black nationalism. He is best known as a champion of black nationalism and the Back to Africa movement, which encouraged people of African ancestry to return to their ancestral homeland. He wrote a number of essays and non-fiction books. This is it. So this is the post-slavery era. Next we pass on to the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance from 1920 to 1940 brought new attention to African American literature from 1920 to 1940. While the Harlem Renaissance, based in the African American community in Harlem in New York City, existed as a larger flowering of social thought and culture with numerous black artists, musicians, and others producing classical works in the fields from jazz to theatre. The Renaissance is perhaps best known for the literature that came out of it. Among the most famous writers of the Renaissance is Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Jean Toomer, Countee Cullen, and Wallace Thurman. The Harlem Renaissance marked a turning point for African American literature. Prior to this time, books by African Americans were primarily read by other black people. Within the Renaissance, though African American literature as well as black fine art and performance art began to be absorbed into mainstream American culture. Now let us pass on to the civil rights movement era. A large migration of African Americans began during World War I, hitting its high point during World War II. During this great migration, black people left the racism and lack of opportunities in the American South and settled in northern cities like Chicago, where they found work in factories and other sectors of the economy. This migration produced a new sense of independence in the black community and contributed to the vibrant black urban culture seen during the Harlem Renaissance. The migration also empowered the growing American civil rights movement, which made a powerful impression on black writers during the 1940s, 50s and 60s. Just as black activists were pushing to end segregation and racism and create a new sense of black nationalism, so too were black authors attempting to address these issues with their writings. Writers include in this period are James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, Gwendolyn Brooks, Nikki Giovanni, and Sonia Sankas. It is also worth now noting that a number of important essays and books about human rights were written by the leaders of the civil rights movement. One of the leading examples of these is Martin Luther King, Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. Martin Luther King's work. As a part of the larger black arts movement, which was inspired by civil rights and black power movements, African American literature began to be defined and analyzed. A number of scholars and writers are generally credited with helping to promote and define African American literature as a genre during this time period, including fiction writers Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, and poet James Emmanuel. And Morrison is the first African American woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. In 1970s, also saw African American books topping the bestseller lists. Among the first books to do so was Roots, the Saga of an American Family by Alex Haley. The book, a fictionalized account of Haley's family history, beginning with the kidnapping of Haley's ancestor Kunta Kinte in Gambia, through his life as a slave in the United States, won the Pulitzer Prize and became a popular television miniseries. Haley also wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X in 1965. Other important writers in recent years include literary fiction writers Gail Jones, Ishmael Reed, Jamaica Kincaid, Randall Cannon, and John Edgar Wideman. African American poets have also garnered attention. This Maya Angelou read a poem at Bill Clinton's inauguration. Rita Dove was a Pulitzer Prize and served as poet laureate of the United States from 1993 to 1995. And Cyrus Castle's Soul Make a Path Through Shouting was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 1994. Castles is a recipient of the William Carlos Williams Award. So African American literature has also crossed over to genre fiction. A pioneer in this area is Chester Himes, who in the 1950s and 60s wrote a series of pulp fiction detective novels featuring Coffin, Ed Johnson, and Gravedigger Jones, two New York City police detectives. Finally, coming to the end, I conclude my presentation. Finally, African American literature has gained added attention through the work of talk show host Oprah Winfrey, who repeatedly has leveraged her fame to promote literature through the medium of her Oprah's book club. Oprah's book club. At times, she has brought African American writers as for broader audience than they otherwise might have received. So this is it. So this is the brief introduction to Afro-American literature, and let us pass on to the second session. Dr. Sheba V. Isaac, Assistant Professor of English, and she is going to present the topic Hybrid Clashes, a journey through the African American psyche. And before that, I would like to introduce her. It's my duty also. Sheba V. Isaac has teaching experience for more than 14 years in different colleges affiliated to universities in Kerala, like the Kannur University, Calicut University, and Mahatma Gandhi University. And her publications in national level journals are The Joke, The Metaphorical Significance of N.S. Mahadev's Higuita, and her research experiences are so many years, and her publication of books in various books, Art and Aesthetic Vision in the Poetry of Kamala Das, exploring the African American identity based on post-colonial paradigm of hybridity, As You Like, a comedy of errors, the witty, the quirky, the burlesque, and the carnivalesque elements in Shakespearean plays, and she is a successful another book publication is a successful novelist dealing with the crisis in man with inner landscape, a comparative study focusing Thagazhi Sivasankara Pillai and Mulkraj Anand, and her paper presentations are exploring the African American identity based on post-colonial paradigm of hybridity, and she has attended so many webinars, workshops, and she has organized some of the seminars and workshops, and she has coordinated of new folder lecture series on theory and praxis conducted by PG Department of English Government College, Tripura, Kerala. I welcome you, ma'am, and make this session interesting and informative. Please come and take over the session, ma'am.
Thank you. I hope that my voice and video both are correct and
yes,
it is perfect.
Both are clearly audible and clearly visible, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta, for the warm welcome and the nice words of introduction. Your presentation was wonderful, and I think it will definitely work as a prelude to what I'm going to talk about next.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. At this moment, I also express my indebtedness to you, Dr. Sangeeta, for inviting me to become a part of this academic endeavor by the Tiruvallur University. I also express my heartfelt gratitude to the Vice Chancellor of Tiruvallur University, the Principal and the Head of the Department of English of the Arts and Science College, Kallakurichi, for giving me this opportunity. Dear participants, on my personal behalf, I welcome you all to my presentation. Thank you for your presence here. First, let me speak a few words about the relevance of my topic. In this presentation, I would like to undertake a journey through the complexities involved in the evolution of African American identities. When we look at the evolution of African American identities, we find a confluence of various hybrid streams of identities. Many a time, these cultural hybrid streams intrigue us with their variety of aspects, which sometimes act as clashes between our essentialist notions of identity. The study of any literary text under the label African American will be complete only if we are able to address such hybrid complexities. That is my opinion about it. This point has led me to go further into the topic and explore more about it. Now, let me present my PPT. I hope all of you can see my PPT now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. As you can see now in the PPT, my topic is titled Hybrid Clashes, a Journey Through the African American Psyche. I have divided my presentation into 5 parts. Introduction, evolution of African American psyche, hybridity, definition and scope, factors leading to hybrid clashes, and finally, conclusion. In the introduction, I will be focusing on our idea of the identity in general. What do we understand by the term identity? What are its linkages? What are its connections? What are its different forms? And what all essentialist features we often tend to attach with the concept of identity. I will be speaking about that in introduction. And I will also be talking about our essentialist ideologies of different identities like African American, Afro Cuban, anything, okay, Pan African, whatever it may be. In the second part of my presentation, I will be talking about the evolution of African American psyche. So I am doing that for the sake of analyzing the hybrid clashes that is inherent in the analysis of African American identities. In the third section of my presentation, I will be talking about hybridity in general, its basic definition to its scope at large, and its relevance in the study of the hyphenated identities like African American identities. In the fourth section of my presentation, I will be discussing the factors leading to hybrid clashes. And this fourth section is the core section of our presentation. And finally, I will conclude my presentation. So this is the overall plan that I have devised for my presentation. Now, as an introduction, I would like to begin with our notion of identity. Identity is a complex signifying web of economic, social, and political power dynamics. In his essay, Cultural Identity and Diaspora, Stuart Hall observes, identity is not as transparent or unproblematic as we think. Perhaps, instead of thinking of identity as an already established fact, which the new cultural practices then represent, we should think instead of identity as a production, which is never complete, always in process, and always constituted within, not outside, representation. So this is what Stuart Hall observes about the whole idea of identity. It is a very different realm of talking about identity. From this definition, we understand that the construction of identity altogether is a complex process. As Stuart Hall observes, we must develop a different pattern of thinking about identity. We must be able to consider it as an unending process of production and adding of any new idea at any time, though some of them perhaps may be contrary to the traditional understanding of a particular identity. When we think about any kind of identity, we tend to arrive at different labels such as black, women, working class, middle class, poor, etc. Associations of identity often operate based on either the differences or the sameness of cultural groups. Identity levels in general attest to the interpretation of groups of people so identified based on their essentialist understandings. What do we mean by the essentialist understanding of an identity? That is, how one culture is different from the other based on their essentialist features such as race, class, gender, sexuality, or ethnicity. Almost all of the identification processes highlight one major difference between cultures of people and ignore all the other aspects. All such aspects of identities, whether major or minor. So this is for an introduction to my presentation. And after this introduction, I am moving to the next session of my presentation. The next session is titled Evolution of African American Psyche. Before we analyze the various factors that lead to the hybrid clashes in the African American psyche, I would like to give in this section a list of some of the inevitable historical aspects leading to the evolution of the African American psyche. They are slavery, racism, negritude, oppression and segregation, and protest culture. First, I will speak about slavery. I would like to explain the influence of slavery upon the African Americans by making a reference to the great chain of being. What is the great chain of being? It is an ancient and medieval ideological framework related to the hierarchy of creation. As per this concept of the great chain of being, B-E-I-N-G, B capital. As per this concept, all creation exists within the universal hierarchy that structures from God at its highest point to inanimate matter at its lowest. The in-between creations include angels, humanity, animals and plants with their respective order of position. Thus, creations on a higher level are believed to possess more authority over lower ones. The great chain of being accorded the lowest position to the Negro in the hierarchical order of creation. And this formed the basis of all the derogatory and negative archetypes in the unconscious of both the whites and the colored alike. Even the colonial theory of race was also influenced by the idea that human races can be lined up from most superior to most inferior. The sequence of order is like this: God, white people, non-white people, and blacks at the bottom. And what is the reason for placing blacks at the bottom? It is because they are slaves and ugly in their appearance. No other reason for that. After slavery, I will be explaining racism. As we all know, the lives of ordinary African Americans were full of their battles against poverty and racism. In his work, Black Skin, White Masks, Frantz Fanon says that racism is the result of negrophobogenesis. What is that? Negrophobogenesis. That is, the white person projects onto the Negro all the repressed sexuality which he harbors in his unconscious. According to Fanon, white racism is the consequence of negrophobia. What is negrophobia? As the European civilization always attached evil with the color black, the Negro has been tragically equated in the European collective unconscious with the absence of good and beauty. This is an issue in the grassroots level in the concept of racism. I will be explaining further in the latter part of my presentation. After slavery and racism, I am now going to the next topic, negritude. What is the concept of negritude? The concept of negritude represents black experience in a different way. It proposes a rediscovery of African heritage in search of self-identity and decolonization. Now I am moving to the next topic, the next aspect leading to the evolution of the African American psyche, and that is oppression and segregation faced by the African Americans. To denote the oppression and segregation of the African Americans, I would like to refer to the era of Jim Crow racism. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term Jim Crow racism. What is Jim Crow racism? Jim Crow was not a person. It was a derisive slang term for the Afro-American. It came to personify the system of government-sanctioned racial oppression and segregation in the United States. How? The origin of the term Jim Crow dates back to the 19th century minstrel show, which was a form of entertainment in America. Each minstrel show consisted of comic skits, variety acts, dancing, and music. The shows were usually performed by the white people in black makeup to lampoon black people as lazy, superstitious, and foolish. That was the purpose of this minstrel shows. To lampoon black people as lazy, superstitious, and foolish. Jim Crow was a fictional character in such minstrel plays. Jim Crow was a clumsy, dim-witted black slaves in such plays. Later, Jim Crow became an umbrella term for the anti-black laws laid down after Reconstruction. Here I spoke about the Jim Crow racism as I really wanted you to note that how the blacks were etched in the psyche of the whites, and also to make you aware of the extent of humiliation the blacks had to undergo. Even the entertainment shows were a kind of torture for the colored people. And the same got reflected in literature also. Now I am going to the last aspect leading to the evolution of the African American psyche. That is the protest culture. There is always a struggle faced by an African American, whether he or she is an ordinary person, an artist, or a writer. What is the struggle? It is the struggle to determine what the role of the black artist should be, whether as a protester or as an artist who creates only for the self. Generation after generation, the African Americans try to purify themselves in the fire of protest and are able to rise from the ashes like a phoenix rejuvenated. So all these 5 aspects in the history of the African American experience contributed to the molding of their psyche. That is what I really wanted to communicate with you through this part of my presentation. Now, I am moving to the third part of my presentation. Here I will be talking about hybridity, its definition and scope. The term hybrid is commonly assumed to be anything of mixed origin. All of you know that. The word has its origin from the Latin word hybrida or hybrida, meaning the offspring of a tame sow and a wild boar. So that is the basic, the origin of the word hybrid. The Chambers 21st Century Dictionary defines the word hybrid as an organism which is the offspring of a union between different races, species, genera, or varieties. A mongrel or a word formed of elements from different languages. So that is the definition given by the Chambers Dictionary. The Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary also gives the same meaning. The offspring produced by crossing two individuals of unlike genetic constitution, specifically the offspring of two animals or plants of different races, varieties, or species. So we can, from all this genealogy of the term hybrid, we understand that the word hybrid has various genealogies, such as horticultural, linguistic, and literary. Here, we are considering only the literary genealogy of the concept. And here comes the significance of the term cultural hybridity. Cultural hybridity is used as a way of creating new artistic forms and developing new ideas. So we are moving from a combination of the two to a creation of new ideas. That is the basic difference when the term hybrid comes in the scenario of literature. The word hybridity was used for the first time in the context of culture by the Cuban sociologist Fernando Ortiz in relation to Afro-Cuban culture in the 1940s. Ortiz used the term Afro-Cuban to recognize and valorize African contributions to Cuban culture. In such cultural context, what happens? Hybridity generally refers to the creation of new transcultural forms within the contact zone produced by colonization. So what do we understand by these contact zones? Contact zones are social spaces where disparate cultures meet, clash, and grapple with each other, often in highly asymmetrical relations of dominance and subordination, like colonialism, slavery, or their aftermaths, and they are lived out across the globe today. Hybridity is the construction of two discourses and the ways in which social forces may shape the choices and attitudes towards them. Whenever the question of hybridity is discussed, it involves, as we all know, the fusion of two relatively distinct modes, styles, qualities, or even identities. Once a hybrid relation is established between two modes or identities, a new vista of infinite interpretations emerges. But unfortunately, what happens? Many literary studies do not take into account the possibility of multiple interpretations. The hybrid combination African-American is such a combination. That is my point. The exploration beyond such a hybrid notion, that is either African or American. The exploration beyond such a hybrid notion is not at all promoted usually. And now I am going to the next part of my presentation, to the next section. So I had given you an introduction and I had given you the factors leading to the evolution of the African American psyche. I had also talked about identity, the basic concept of identity, and also about its relation with its essentialist understandings. I have also told you about the concept of hybridity and what is the importance of cultural hybridity. What is the relevance of the hybridity studies in literature? It invokes a new vista of multiple interpretations. And now I'm going to my next section, and this is the core section of my presentation. And this section is titled Factors Leading to Hybrid Clashes. There are very many factors leading to the hybrid clashes. Here I am focusing only 6 among them. They are multitude of identity labels, definition of Black consciousness, contextualization of African American texts, diasporic associations, racial aspects, and vernacular representations. All these factors lead to clashes in the mind of the reader or the critic. And the clash is between what their essentialist or traditional notion and the present or postmodern notion of identity of the Afro-Americans. And now we are going to analyze all these factors one by one. So the first one is the multitude of identity labels. If we search through the history, we understand that African Americans are put under different labels in different periods of history. These variety of labels contribute to the hybrid clashes in their psyche, in their mind. And these labels include African, colored, Negro, Afro-American, Black, and finally African American. So when I framed my title, I had given the last label, African American. So what is the differences? What are the differences between all such labels? It has great significance in framing the psyche of an Afro-American. We will see each label one by one. African. What do we understand by the term African? The label African, with reference to Afro-Americans I am speaking. Okay, not the people from Africa. Okay, with reference to Afro-Americans, the first term or the first label given was as African. So the term African was a general ancestry identifier. Freedmen and slaves alike used this term to remind themselves of their history and their motherland. Now we go to the next section, to the next label, that is colored. During the 1830s, we see the non-black campaigns in America. As a result, there was a force to decrease the use of terms referencing African. I told you the first label was African. And there was a tendency to decrease the use of the term African, referencing African. Instead, they used colored. A large number of African Americans appreciated the term colored, and it was was used. So one of the oldest, largest, and most widely recognized civil rights organization was named with this label. What is the name of that organization? The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, founded in February 1909. So this is the impact of the labeling during that period. After that comes the term, the label Negro. So Negro has a specialty. The term Negro, the label has a speciality because the N is sometimes capitalized and the N is sometimes in small case. So whether we have to use Negro with N in the capital case or N in the small case, that was also a very big issue in labeling the African Americans. So there was great prejudice also regarding the use of the term Negro. The label Negro seemed to be a derogatory term as it was used by the Europeans to denote the Americans of African descent simultaneously with other labels such as black Moors, and niggers. Negro in its uncapitalized form became popular first. Consequently, many recognized that being an uncapitalized race was not dignified. So there was a movement to capitalize it. You might have heard of W.E.B. Du Bois. Dr. Sangeeta had clearly referred to this person in her presentation. W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the most important leaders of the civil rights movements. He was a public individual, Pan-Africanist, professor of sociology, historian, writer, and editor. W.E.B. Du Bois publicly expressed his desire for the term to be capitalized. Which term? The term Negro to be capitalized starting in the early 1900s. But it was not accepted by the white print media as a legitimate proper noun to be capitalized until the 1940s. Now comes the next label, Afro-American. So there is only slight difference between African American and Afro-American. But Afro-American comes as the next label in the sequential order. Another group of critics felt that the term colored was too broad because it encompassed too many people of color from different parts of the world, other than the whites. Some other leaders wanted to maintain the uniqueness of the group, uniqueness of the Africans, Afro-Americans also. So it was at this time the term Afro-American gained some popularity. The University of California, Los Angeles used this label for their Center for Afro-American Studies in 1969. Many preferred Afro-American to black and Negro because of its connection to the past and the present. Afro-American, its connection to the past and the present. Now comes the label black. The term black started to gain popularity in the mid-1960s with the rise of the Black Power movement. The leaders of the Black Power movement propagated the slogan, "Black is beautiful." What was their aim? Their aim was to dispel the notion that black people's natural features such as skin color, facial features, and hair are inherently ugly. So black began to be considered as beautiful, at least by the African Americans. It was a very tremendous change that had occurred in the history of the labeling of the African Americans. And finally, by the 1990s comes the label African Americans. The label African American replaced all other labels as it had the advantage of indicating greater cultural integrity. So that is the relevance of this term, greater cultural integrity. So it is a more open term to include a variety of interpretations regarding African American literature and also African American studies in general. So what I wanted to tell you is that all such labels constructed hybrid clashes in the psyche of the African Americans. So after this, I am going to the next factor rousing this hybrid clashes in the psyche of the African Americans. That is, the definition or how to define the black consciousness. Another factor that leads to hybrid clashes in the African American psyche is the complexities involved in the definition of black consciousness. There are various parameters to define the African American consciousness. We are talking about the psyche. So we have to define the consciousness of the African Americans. One among them is double consciousness. Another one is black consciousness. And the third one is racial consciousness. So first we will discuss double consciousness. What do we understand by the term double consciousness? The concept of double consciousness suggested by W.E.B. Du Bois in his The Souls of Black Folk, published in 1903, goes parallel with the African American cultural studies of hybridity. It is central to black cultural studies and discussions of the mixed cultural identity of Afro-Americans. Du Bois argued that all black Americans suffer from a sense of double consciousness or conflict between their black and American cultural identities. So this is what we mean by double consciousness, the conflict between their black and American cultural identities. Caused by the enforced exclusion of blacks from the mainstream American society at the turn of the century, this self-division obstructs the development of authentic self-consciousness. Because it compels black Americans to regard and evaluate their black identities through the lens of the dominant white culture. After discussing this double consciousness, I am now proceeding to the next topic, that is black consciousness. Black consciousness or black identity is propagated by the Black Arts Movement. The Afro-American identity gained a political and powerful impression with the aggressive and militant poetic voice of Amiri Baraka. With the Black Arts Movement, he set out a different strategy of resistance against the stereotypical conceptions of black identity. His was an Afrocentric strategy resisting the white domination. He altogether rejects the integrationist poetics and celebrates blackness with violence. So these are the two first consciousness, double consciousness and black consciousness. So in double consciousness, we understand that there is a conflict between their black and the American identities, and this conflict leads to a self-division in their own mind, which obstructs the development of their authentic self-consciousness. And in black consciousness, what do we find? We find blackness with violence, blackness with militancy. Okay, so this is the difference between the two. And we are now proceeding to the third concept, racial consciousness. In the second part of my presentation, I have already told you about racism as one of the factors leading to the evolution of the African American psyche. You might be remembering that. Here, we see the importance of racial consciousness. A racial consciousness is nurtured by blacks all over the world. I'm not talking about
ஆயிடுச்சு. நான்